and Edward Mannion are not being confirmed. It's my fault. So, Madam President, let me finish this consent agreement. That nomination be printed in the record, the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate then resume legislative session.
Is there objection?
Madam President.
The Republican leader.
Reserving the right to object. It really is quite curious that my friend the Majority Leader is complaining about the one area I can think of over the last year and a half where the Senate has met historic norms. In other words, we have handled judicial confirmations in this Congress, here in the Senate, in a way that meets and in some ways exceeds historic norms. At the same time, of course, we haven't done all the other things that we normally have done in the past. But so far during this presidential election year, we've confirmed 5 circuit court nominees and 29 district court nominees. That is a good record for presidential election years. Let me look at a few. In 1996, we confirmed 18 district court nominees. This year, we've done 29. In 2000, we confirmed 31. In 2004, we confirmed 30. And in 2008, the last year of President Bush's tenure, only 24 district court nominees were confirmed. In fact, in 2008, Senate Democrats treated President Bush's nominees so badly they were forced to confirm, as the Majority Leader just bragged about, 10 nominees in September of that year just to try to catch up to historical norms. So rather than bragging about doing 10 on one day, the reason they did 10 on one day is they were so pathetically below historic norms they had to do 10 on one day to not be completely embarrassed by the process. If they had not done that, the Senate would have confirmed only 14 district court nominees in 2008, fewer than half the 29 we've already confirmed this year. President Obama is also faring much better than President Bush did in his second term, which is the last time the Senate considered and confirmed 2 Supreme Court nominees. And the reason I bring that up, because Supreme Court nominees take up a lot of time and tend to be a distraction. And President Obama, of course, did have 2 Supreme Court nominees during his first term. So far, the Senate has confirmed 158 of President Obama's judicial nominees. Compare that to President Bush's second term when the Senate confirmed only 122. So President Obama's gotten 158. President Bush in his second term got 122. So the Senate has confirmed 1/3 more nominees than it did the last time it had to process 2 Supreme Court nominees. Not only is President Obama being treated fairly in absolute terms, but the Senate is also treating him fairly relative to the number of nominees he has submitted. So far during President Obama's term, the Senate has confirmed 158 of his 205 nominees. That's a confirmation rate of 77%. President Bush got only 74% of his nominees during his first term. The contrast is even more revealing when you compare President Obama to President Bush's second term. During that term, President Bush got only 61% of his nominees confirmed, 61%. Again, President Obama got 77% of his nominees confirmed versus President Bush, 61. Now we're trying to get consent agreements to process the next 2 district court nominations that are in the queue, and we're hoping that will come about. That's the procedure we've been following. I'm hopeful we can achieve that. If we do, we will have confirmed 31 district court nominees, which will equal the record for the most district court confirmations in a presidential election here in recent memory. So whether it's looked at in terms of absolute confirmations or relative confirmations, this president is being treated very fairly. And I'm happy to continue to work with the Majority Leader, but we cannot allow the majority to jam us here at the end of the session. Therefore, I object.
Madam President.
Objection is heard.
I'm not going to go on this much, but I would say this. no matter how you try to juggle the numbers, we still have 12 emergencies. 12. I would hope that my friends on the other side would at least look at some of those emergencies and see if we could get some help for those beleaguered judges out there and court personnel. It wasn't until May 7th of this year that we were able to vote on our first nominee for this year. They were all from last year that we did before that. So I would hope that everyone understands we have 12 judicial emergencies, and if we got these some of these nominations done, it would take that away and make life for our court system much more fair, more fair.
Madam President, there's no way to spin the math. President Obama has been treated quite fairly, every way you look at it, certainly meeting the historical norm for the treatment of presidents in presidential years. I rest my case. I yield the floor.
The senator from New York.
Yeah, I ask unanimous consent. I be given 3 minutes, the senator from Indiana be given 3 minutes, and then Senator from Rhode Island be able to continue on his remarks on the
Without objection.
Thank you. Madam President, I just wanted to follow up a little bit on the Democratic and Republican leaders' conversation. It's not the first time we have seen obstruction for obstruction's sake over non-controversial consensus nominees to the federal bench. It's been going on for 4 years. In 2008, we cleared all 10 of President Bush's district court nominees pending on the floor by unanimous consent. All 10 in September of 2008. And now, of course, we're being blocked. Well, I don't think that Oliver Wendell Holmes could get unanimous consent from our Republican colleagues to be a district court judge today. In the Western District of New York, nominee Frank Gerasi has total bipartisan support. His slot's been vacant for years. We need him to fill that judicial emergency post. His nomination's been pending on the floor for more than 2 months. Why can't we confirm him today? He passed the Judiciary Committee unanimously. With strong bipartisan support. In the Southern District, another nominee, Lorna Schofield, has been waiting confirmation for 2 months. She also has complete and total bipartisan support. What's more, she'd be the first Filipina confirmed to the federal bench. The Southern District is one of the busiest benches in the country, and the judges there hear among the most important cases: complex civil litigation, insider trading, terrorism, you name it, they do it. Why can't we confirm her today? We hear one excuse after another for filibustering judges: recess appointments, funding for some area unrelated to judges, the so-called Thurman Rule, which incidentally has never applied to district court nominees. So I support the majority leader's motion for unanimous consent for these pending district court nominees, and hope our colleagues will think about it. And before we leave this week, that we can come together and do what we've been doing together for decades: confirm uncontroversial judges. I yield the floor and the balance of my time back.
Okay.
The senator from Indiana.
Madam President, thank you. Madam President, yesterday, Senator Landrieu, chairman of the Homeland Security Appropriations Committee, and I, as ranking member, entered a colloquy into the record, and I would just like to explain briefly what it was we were attempting to do. This is essentially to clarify a provision regarding cybersecurity that is incorporated in the continuing resolution, which we will be taking up here shortly. I understand that there's some confusion, and there has been confusion over Section 137, as to whether or not this language that's now incorporated in the CR expands DHS authority or allows for implementation of a potential executive order pertaining to cybersecurity. The answer to that question is no, absolutely not. The provision is limited to funding improvements in the Federal Network Security Program, which provides security systems that monitor cyber attacks on federal government computer networks, and it helps enhance the protection for those existing networks that are in place. It's important that both the House and Senate Homeland Security Appropriations bills included this additional funding, and it's considered so critical it was added to the continuing resolution so that this implementation can continue without interruption. And it does so because these networks are constantly under attack by individuals and groups and others that could cause real problems and real harm to our country. So let me just be very clear what the colloquy and what the language that has been agreed on a bipartisan basis and what the colloquy said. This provision does not intrude upon authorizer's jurisdiction. This provision does not have anything to do with the regulation of private sector infrastructure. DHS has confirmed that in writing, and this provision does not enable a new executive order in any way. I would be the first to object to this language if that was the case, and I believe that we have now remedied any confusion that might exist over that particular language. I'm hopeful, even though we were not able to ultimately pass and incorporate a workable cyber protection language, that we can continue to do so. I want to thank the chair of the Homeland Security Appropriations Committee, Senator Landrieu, for joining me in clarifying this important provision included in the continuing resolution. And with that, I want to thank my colleague from Rhode Island for allowing me the time to insert this, and unfortunately his good presentation was interrupted by that, but I thank my colleague for the time to clarify that. With that, I yield to my colleague.
Madam President.
The senator from Rhode Island.
I'm very happy to allow my colleague from Indiana the time, and I appreciate very much his good work on cybersecurity and hope that he and I and others can continue to work towards a legislative solution on that. My topic had been the acidification of our oceans as a result of carbon pollution, now up 30% in acidity, projected to increase 160% in acidity at unprecedented rates in millions of years, 50 to 300 million years since we've seen this kind of dramatic change in ocean acidity, and what it means for species that use calcium carbonate to create their shells and their skeletons, species like oysters and crabs and lobsters and the little plankton at the bottom of the food chain that so many other species depend on as the base of the food chain. These unprecedented changes that I'm talking about in ocean acidity are not happening alone. They're happening on top of dramatically changing ocean temperature, also driven by carbon pollution. Just this week, after on the surface of the Earth we experienced one of the hottest summers on record, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released this statement about the Northeast Shelf Large Marine Ecosystem, the marine ecosystem area that extends from the Gulf of Maine down to Cape Hatteras. Here's what they said. During the first 6 months of 2012, sea surface temperatures were the highest ever recorded. Above average temperatures were found in all parts of the ecosystem, from the ocean bottom to the sea surface and across the region. The annual 2012 spring plankton bloom was intense, started earlier, and lasted longer than average. This has implications for marine life, from the smallest creatures to the largest marine mammals like whales. Atlantic cod continued to shift northeastward from its historic distribution center. Now, I don't need to tell anybody in the Northeast how important the stability of the cod fishery is right now. That historic fishery is facing significant reductions in catch limits because the population is not rebounding as expected from the reduced catches that fishermen are already contributing to try to solve this problem. Something is causing that failure to rebound. And the unprecedented environmental changes occurring in the ecosystem cannot be overlooked as the culprit behind this unexplained phenomenon of failure to rebound. NOAA has cited a 2009 study published in Marine Ecology Progress Series that analyzed survey data in the region from 1987 to 2007. It found that about half of 36 fish stocks evaluated have been shifting northward for the past 4 decades, with some disappearing from United States waters as they move farther offshore. In Narragansett Bay, in my home state of Rhode Island, average water temperatures have increased by 4 degrees. This amounts to an ecosystem shift. In fact, the bay, once dominated by bottom-dwelling fish like winter flounder, is now more populated by open water species like squid and butterfish. Let's look at winter flounder a little bit more closely. In the 1960s, the biomass of winter flounder in Narragansett Bay was as high as 4,500 metric tons. By 2011, it was down to just about 900. This is the total estimated biomass in the blue line. The red line is the landings. That's what the fishermen were able to catch and bring in. And as you can see, they went from 1,000 metric tons up to 2,000 metric tons, and then over time it sagged and returned to 2,000 metric tons, and now it has slipped to virtually 0. This was a very productive fishery for Rhode Island fishermen, and it is now virtually gone. Past overfishing had a role to play, but so too has that dramatic temperature change. And the stock's ability to recover is made all the more difficult by ongoing temperature change as well as acidification. The changes facing our oceans do not stop at higher temperatures and greater acidity. I wish they did. But as average global temperatures rise, water expands. Water expands as it gets warmer. And new fresh water pours out of the snowpack and ice sheets of Antarctica and Greenland. Long-term data from tide gauges in our traditional sailing port of Newport, Rhode Island, show an increase in average sea level of nearly 10 inches since 1930. At these tide gauges, measurements show that the rate of sea level rise has increased in the past 2 decades compared to the rate over the last century. The increase is not just happening, it's speeding up. This is consistent with reports that since 1990, sea level has been rising faster than the rate predicted by scientific models used to generate the IPCC estimates. Global predictions for sea level rise range from 20 to 39 inches by the year 2100, with recent studies showing that the numbers could be even higher than that due to greater than expected melting of glaciers and ice sheets. Our Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council has used these predictions to estimate that by 2100, sea level in Rhode Island could rise approximately 2 to 5 feet. For our coastal ocean state, that is a dramatic threat. Sea level rise and the increase in storm surges that will accompany it threaten at-risk coastal areas whose roads, whose power plants, whose wastewater treatment plants, whose public facilities may need to be reinforced or relocated. Even the natural environment there, estuaries, marshes, and barrier islands have a role. They act as natural filtration systems, and they act as buffers against storms. And they are being inundated by rising seas. In Rhode Island, local erosion rates doubled from 1990 to 2006. Some of the freshwater wetlands near our coast are already transforming themselves into salt marsh as a result of this inundation. Our Coastal Resources Management Council has documented places like a beach in South Kingstown where 160 feet of shoreline has been lost to erosion since 1951 at a rate of 3 feet per year. In the small but vibrant coastal community of Matunic, beaches have eroded 20 feet over the past 12 years. The town faces difficult decisions as the only road connecting the community and their restaurants and businesses is protected by less than a dozen feet of sand. The road provides access for emergency vehicles, and it lies on top of the water main. These are not easy concerns for communities with limited resources and lives and livelihoods at risk. Geoengineering solutions have been theorized to keep the temperature of the planet in check as a result of global climate change by blocking in various ways the heat of the sun. These notions may seem somewhat far-fetched, but even given that, they will not stop the chemical process of acidification of our oceans. Only curbing global carbon dioxide emissions can do that. Sadly, our government in Washington these days responds more to dollars than to truth, and the dirty energy dollars are on the march this campaign season. Over the weekend, the New York Times analyzed 138 energy-related campaign ads aired on television. It estimated that over $153 million has been spent this year to promote coal, argue for more oil and gas drilling, and to attack clean energy. With nearly 7 weeks to go before this presidential election, 2012 ads promoting fossil fuels are nearly 150% higher than 4 years ago. And that's with 7 weeks to go, the peak buying season. Other disturbing details emerge from the New York Times article. Governor Romney, his PAC, and the RNC have received at least $13 million in campaign contributions from fossil fuel industry executives or related groups. Governor Romney has accepted $3 million in contributions from Oxbow, a coal company controlled by William Koch, a brother of David Koch. Well, nature could not be giving us clearer warnings. And whatever higher power gave us our advanced human capacity for perception, calculation, analysis, deduction, and foresight has laid out before us more than enough information to make the right decisions. These God-given human capacities provide us everything we need to act responsibly, if only we will. But the polluting special interests appear to rule here. The party of Theodore Roosevelt, the great conservationist, the party of President Nixon, who founded the EPA, the party of John Chafee of Rhode Island, who was instrumental in the passage of the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act, and the party of Russell Train, who, as I mentioned earlier, died this week at the age of 92 after a distinguished career in environmental protection in the Republican Party. That party has now become the servant and handmaiden, perhaps paid consort would be a better way to say it given the money involved, of polluting special interests. All of this money, Madam President, can alter how Congress behaves. And all of this money can influence the laws we pass. But the laws of nature are not subject to repeal, no matter how much special interest money flows into campaign coffers. The laws of chemistry don't care about the filibuster. The laws of physics don't care how senators vote. Nature will work its will, and one day there will be an accounting. Madam President, I yield the floor, and I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Urquhart.
Green on this Thursday morning is Congressman Tom Cole, Republican of Oklahoma. He's a member of the Appropriations Committee and the Budget Committee. We're going to talk to him about the economy, the fiscal cliff, possibility of sequestration, and the politics of all this. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you, Susan.
Well, in the green room, you heard the discussion with our audience with their thoughts on whether the economy is getting better. What do you think, and what do you find in Oklahoma?
Well, Oklahoma is actually very good right now. Our unemployment rate's under 5%, 4.8. We're doing very well. I'd like to always point out we have a Republican governor and all Republican legislature, but this has been actually a reasonably good time for us, in contrast to the country, which I think is not doing well. Look, both presidential candidates agree that 8.2% unemployment certainly is too high. I think both would agree that a 2% growth rate is way too low, certainly less than the president estimated would be at this point. And anybody that's not focused on a $5 trillion debt and the speed with we're racking it up and the lack of a real effort to deal with it, I think ought to be worried about the future. So I'd say the state of the national economy is not good.
The Politico notes on its front page, Hill sees flurry of fiscal cliff discussions. And let me just overlay this with HuffPost. Robert Gates, former defense secretary, blasts zealots for budget bickering, fiscal reform failure, tax raiders huddle with Ben Bernanke and budget officials on the fiscal cliff. Tim Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, pays a visit to Capitol Hill. What's the message everyone's bringing to Congress?
You know, I think that we have to do something about it, but honestly, most of the people that are bringing that message also are realistic enough to know that's not going to happen until after an election. You can't make big decisions until the American people decide who the decision makers are going to be. It's unfortunate that the super committee didn't get its job done last year. I think if it had a deadline, it might have, if there was an election looming or something big. But it didn't. And, the reality is we need to deal with it. It's an extremely important thing, and I think we will deal with it. I think actually one of the few things both parties agree on is sequester would be a disaster for the economy. So given that, they just have different ideas about how to solve it. The president's plan, which he hasn't presented a plan, but effectively is to let taxes go up. He's laid out, and that's enough revenue to get rid of sequester, not to solve the long-term deficit, but you could certainly avoid sequester. The Republican plan was actually passed in May through the House, which is basically looking at non-discretionary spending, making some reforms and some reductions there, and trying to deal with it that way. So you have two different proposals, but both sides agree the outcome's unacceptable, and honestly, I think we will be able to avoid it. But it's another one of these perils of Pauline moment where we get to the last possible second before we do something. That worries and scares the markets. It should. It worries the American people. It should. And there's always the chance something can go wrong when you wait to the last minute to do something you know needs to get done. Well,
let me pick up on your argument that after the election, the people will understand where power lies. In fact, then, it will be people who are lame duck members of Congress who are making these important decisions rather than duly elected in the next Congress. Is that appropriate?
Well, I would prefer it not be, but actually most of the members will have been reelected. I mean, that's just the normal state of American politics. So probably a quarter at the most of the House of Representatives would not be returning to the new Congress. The president may or may not be the next president of the United States. We don't know if President Obama will be reelected yet. Two-thirds of the Senate isn't even up for election, and again, the majority of the remainder that are incumbents that are running for reelection will be there. So it's not as if this is a body that's not broadly reflective of American sentiment.
I'm going to open up our phone lines for your questions or comments for Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma. He has a seat at the Appropriations Committee and then also at the Budget Committee, so lots of federal funding decisions come before him, and he's here to take your questions or comments on Congress and the federal budget and the debt and all the politics wrapped up in that. Well, Congressman, let me ask you about Medicare and Social Security, because if, in fact, there are changes in discretionary spending, everyone says that's really not where the big problems are. So how do you see Medicare and Social Security playing out?
Well, on Medicare and Medicaid, really, because they come together, the Republicans have a plan. It's passed, and they've passed twice through the House. It's gotten over 40 votes, 42 if I recall correctly, in the Senate, and that's the Ryan budget. So that is a real way of dealing with it. Now, you may like or dislike the plan. The problem has been we haven't gotten a plan from the Democratic Senate. The administration hasn't presented a plan on long-term health care spending. And literally, if you're going to be running for President of the United States, you ought to put a plan on the table, and let's have a look and let's debate it. In terms of Social Security, I actually argued that we should present a Social Security plan as well. Then Chairman Ryan decided not to because he thought it was actually the one area that we might be able to compromise with the Democrats and that laying out a plan might make that more difficult. Because really the math on Social Security is pretty predictable compared to health care. We know the main elements. We know what the population is likely to be. We know what the income is likely to be. It's much easier to project. It's politically difficult, but it's not hard to do in terms of plan. So we did that, and unfortunately that hasn't worked out. But I do think the next Congress honestly needs to deal with both these things. We're not in any immediate jeopardy in terms of Social Security. Everybody's Social Security taxes are probably going to go up. I think the payroll tax holiday will run out, but we still have major reserves. That doesn't hit the wall until 2030 something, but sooner is better. We could fix this thing now. On Medicare, I think that's really the great unknown of the election. We know what's going to happen, I think, if Romney and Ryan prevail, and that's basically the Ryan budget proposal. If the president wins, again, he hasn't put a plan on the table. Our Democratic colleagues haven't either, so we have no earthly idea what they want to do.
Well, when you look at the politics of Medicare, I've been listening last night to recent polls coming out in battleground states suggesting that since Paul Ryan's election, Florida is now more in play than it might have been in the past, which means people are beginning to express concerns to pollsters about the federal government tampering with Medicare. So what are the politics of this?
Well, the federal government's already tampered with Medicare. Look, we took $700 billion out of Medicare and shifted it to Obamacare to fund a brand new entitlement. Medicare is going to change, and the real question is, how is it going to change? And are we going to be up front with people and talk to them now? The best chance for Medicare for the current recipients and those near term to survive is actually the Ryan budget, which makes provision for that. So far, again, the president, I think, in this regard has failed. He just has not presented a plan at all. The politics are difficult. There's no question about it. I'm actually very proud of the Republican caucus for putting forward a plan 2 years in a row and putting their fingerprints on it. It's one thing to talk about reform, but the minute you vote for it, you know it's going to be used in a campaign ad against you. That takes some courage. We've got to have comparable courage in the United States Senate, where they haven't produced a budget in 3 years, let alone a serious alternative plan. And we've got to have comparable courage from the administration. So far, in terms of entitlement spending, they just simply haven't exhibited that.
Well, I want to get to calls for you, but before I do, what do you think of the state of the Romney-Ryan ticket this week?
I think it's actually pretty good. We're going through a lot of hand-wringing, but look, I was chief of staff of the Republican National Committee in 2000. George Bush was behind at this point, won. I remember Ronald Reagan being behind at this point in 1980, and he won. I really think the decisive days of the campaign are in front of us. I think October will be the decisive month. It's a close race. It's going to remain close to the end. The debates are going to be critical. We have 2 more job reports between now and the election. And sadly, we have an unfolding, literally, crisis in the Middle East, ongoing crisis, part of the Arab Spring. That's unpredictable. Nobody knows what that might mean in terms of the election. So I think it's volatile, it's close, and it's going to go right down to the wire.
Well, let's go to calls for you, Congressman, beginning with Keene, New Hampshire. New Hampshire being one of those states that is being targeted by both campaigns. Ron is a Democrat there.
Hello. Can you hear me?
We can, sir. Good morning.
Hello. Mr. Cole, it's an honor to speak with you this morning.
Thank you. My honor.
C-SPAN also. Always a great pleasure. You guys do a great job. You said that President Obama didn't have a plan. He's been sending plans to Congress ever since he's been there, and his plans are dead on arrival as soon as they reach Congress. This president hasn't been given 4 years to fix the economy. He's been given a year and a half. Let me ask you this. What has the Republican majority in the Congress, what have they done in the last 2.5 years? They've cobbled together some plans that they knew wasn't going to pass and sent them over to the Senate. And they knew they wasn't going to pass because they were just some outtakes of the president's original plans. But the Republicans have done absolutely nothing in the last 3.5 years to help this economy, all in the name of bipartisanship and to the country's detriment. The president has tried to work with Republicans. You see that all the time, and it just hasn't happened.
Well,
I
Ron,
think
let's pick it up from there. Thank you for your call from New Hampshire this morning.
A good, thoughtful call. Look, first of all, remember the president did get everything he wanted for 2 years, and he had total control of Congress, and he still retains control of the United States Senate. So this idea that somehow the president's held hostage by a Republican majority in the House of Representatives is remarkable. Ronald Reagan never had control of both houses. He only had control of the United States Senate. He managed to get a lot done, and he got a lot done throughout his presidency. Bill Clinton didn't have control of either House of Congress for 6 years. I suspect you would think he got a lot done. So I think the president just has not produced. And the things he did get done the first 2 years, the health care plan, the stimulus, are remarkably unpopular. Now, in terms of the last year and a half, because that's all the Republicans have had control of the House of Representatives, we've done a lot. The old Republican Party honestly would have never passed the Ryan budget. I think it took a lot of courage to actually put your fingerprints on a plan that will lower spending by over $5 trillion and will fundamentally reform Medicare and Medicaid. That's a real plan. And when you say the president sent us plans, he's never sent us a plan on that. And when he sent us a budget, his own budget, when it was put to vote in the United States Senate, the last 2 years failed 97-0 once and 99-0 the second time, and 414-0 in the House. Now, when Democrats won't vote for the plan that the president submits, it's not a serious plan. The Democratic Senate hasn't produced a budget in 3 years. The Ryan budget is an overall plan, a roadmap to tax reform, a roadmap to entitlement reform, a roadmap to a stronger restraint on discretionary spending. In terms of not doing things, actually, I would argue that Congress has done more than it gets credit for, and I'll give the administration credit. Look, we had a budget deal in April of 2011 that cut discretionary spending on an annualized basis by $60 billion. We had a debt ceiling deal that we're still wrangling over, but it cut long-term spending by over $2 trillion. Over $1 trillion of that has already been done. We had 3 free trade bills that the president asked for, the Republican Congress produced, which a Democratic Congress couldn't. We just finished a transportation bill, long-term, which most people thought we couldn't do. Took care of the student loan interest rate issue. We did FISA, which is the intelligence reform that the administration called the most important piece of work in that area. There's actually been a little bit more bipartisanship than either side would suggest, but on the fundamental big issues, how are you going to long-term fix the economy, deal with the structural deficit, there simply hasn't been a plan produced by the administration. When you say that we haven't worked with the president, look, I think the beginning of working with the president is producing what's your position. And the Ryan budget is our opening position in what we would hope is a negotiation. The other side has to produce an opening position as well. So far, I would argue the president and our colleagues in the Senate have failed to do that.
Peter Hibbert on Twitter wants to come back to you, Congressman, on the Medicare discussion. He writes, please, not the $700 billion again. A large part of it was excessive insurance premiums, and Ryan had the same $700 billion in his.
Yeah, he certainly did have the same $700 billion. The difference is he didn't take it out of Medicare. You know, he left the money there. He didn't fund a whole new entitlement with it. To me, that's the great distinction. I'm all for saving money in Medicare. I just think you ought to leave the money that you save in the program that you're saving it from. Look, this is a program whose the number of people on will probably double in about the next 20 years as the baby boom generation retires. To be taking reserves out of it to fund a new entitlement is simply wrong. And, you know, Paul didn't do that. The president did.
Next is a call from Wilcox, Arizona. Joe is a Republican there. You're on for Congressman Cole. Good morning.
I am.
Morning.
Well, good morning. Congressman Cole, I'm appalled at the fact of where the Republican Party's gone. For you to sit there and think that you've done a wonderful job is crazy. But here's 2 questions. What do you think about a constitutional amendment to base your pay on 2 votes a year on your performance? And
what are the votes?
What do you think that we are ignorant when you come out after a president's elected and say we're going to make him a one-term president, and you make the rest of us pay for your childish acts? I mean, how do you think we should take that?
Joe, you listed yourself as Joe, you listed yourself as
I am a Republican.
Yeah. You're frustrated.
And I'm very
Republican,
upset with the lip service. It's like a used man.
Oh, and go back to your idea. What are the 2 votes a year you referred to?
Karl Rove. Karl Rove, and he's selling anti-gay.
Okay, thanks very much. He was talking and we weren't able to clarify that.
Senator from New Jersey is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent that further calling of the roll be dispensed with.
So ordered.
Madam President, this week, the leader of the Republican Party, their candidate for president, was seen in a video speaking at a fundraising meeting with wealthy campaign donors in Florida. In the privacy of the event, Mitt Romney spilled to the donors there what he really thinks about half of the American people. That's over 150 million people. He disparagingly said 47% of Americans support President Obama simply because they don't owe federal income taxes or they're getting benefits from a government program. And just to make sure that there's no misquote here, this is the Mitt Romney statement. He said there are 47% who are with him being President Obama, who are dependent on government, who believe they're victims. And my job, Mitt Romney says, is not to worry about these people. I'll never convince them that they should take personal responsibility and care for their lives. Madam President, this is coming from the leader of the Republican Party, a man who is running to represent every American, all 310 million, from the nation's highest office. These comments are disturbing coming from anybody, but coming from him, they're a disgrace. In plain English, he says if you don't pay federal income tax or you receive a government benefit, then you don't take responsibility personally for your life. So who are these 47% who Mitt Romney and his Republican friends feel such contempt for? They're parents who work hard every day to give their families a better future. They're seniors who helped build this country and now depend on Social Security to keep food on the table. They're veterans who risked their lives in Iraq or Afghanistan. Say here, who Mitt Romney says doesn't take personal responsibility and care for their lives. Working families with children, senior citizens, veterans. Mitt Romney seems to think that there are a bunch of lazies just taking money from the wealthy. So today I want to take a closer look at some of these Americans who Mitt Romney says don't take personal responsibility and care for their lives. Let's first look at working families. He says, I'll never convince them that they should take personal responsibility and care for their lives. What kind of contemptuous statement is that? We're talking about almost over 150 million people. Madam President, millions of people, millions of parents across the country work long hours, struggling to put food on the table and clothes on their children's back. A family of four making as much as $46,000 a year often will not owe any federal income taxes. So these families would be part of the 47% of Americans that Mitt Romney accuses of being lazy and irresponsible. These families deserve our support, not our scorn. They didn't ask anybody for a handout, and they certainly don't deserve Romney's condemnation. Madam President, let's now look at another group of Americans who, by Mitt Romney's definition, are victims who don't take responsibility for their lives. Senior citizens. More than half of those who don't pay federal income or payroll taxes are senior citizens on fixed incomes. He says, I'll never convince them
that they should take personal responsibility and care for their lives. People showing some age, they ought to take personal responsibility for their lives. Romney thinks that seems to think that because these seniors depend on Social Security, that they're not willing to take personal responsibility for their lives. Mitt Romney has no business lecturing these people, these Americans, about personal responsibility. These seniors worked, paid taxes their whole lives, fought to defend our nation's freedom, and built the greatest middle class that the world has ever known. It's Mitt Romney who needs a lesson from them about personal responsibility. Now let's look at another group of Americans that Romney has dismissed, troops and veterans. When we send our troops into harm's way, with their combat pay is not taxed. And when veterans come back injured physically and emotionally, we don't ask them to pay taxes on their disability benefits. Should they pay taxes on these benefits in order to be honorable in Mitt Romney's eyes? I believe that they've already given their country more than their share. And if you look at this picture, it tells you so much. That hug that a returning veteran gets. Glad to see his family, glad to see him standing straight, able to communicate. He says, I'll never convince them that they should take personal responsibility and care for their lives. Imagine that. For him to make statements like that that include veterans. And we give our veterans government benefits that they earn through their service. They get education benefits tax-free under a new GI Bill. Many receive health care from the VA, and some get housing assistance. Never convince them that they should take personal responsibility and care for their lives. What would Mitt Romney say to veterans who don't owe federal income tax or receive a government benefit? We've seen the tape. He says they are victims who could never be convinced to take personal responsibility for their lives. Mitt Romney must have known many who served in Vietnam during his period of maturity. Did he think of them who served in Vietnam as not doing their share, not taking personal responsibility? I'm a veteran. I take offense at that. These men and women risk everything, fighting for our freedoms and our rights, and we ought to do everything we can to support them. These heroes know a great deal more than Mitt Romney about personal responsibility and sacrifice. Madam President, Mitt Romney was simply saying what many in today's Republican Party truly believe. He's pulled back the curtain on their agenda. He's revealed the stark choice facing the American people. Madam President, America deserves better in a potential presidential candidate that dismisses the contribution that 47%, to be more precise, of our fellow Americans get derision and disrespect. That's hardly appropriate for a presidential candidate to be saying. He, after all, seeks the job that puts him in charge of the whole 310 million people in America. And yet, he has the audacity to say that these people are not worthy of honor, worthy of thanks, worthy of their contribution to this country. All this time, it was thought that Mitt Romney just didn't get it. But it turns out worse than that. He just doesn't care. He knows what he's saying, and he says it deliberately. He just doesn't care. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to come to the floor today to speak on a different subject, which is to demonstrate my support for the sportsman's package compiled by Senator Tester from Montana. I know the bill was discussed on the floor last night, and the request to pass this package of bipartisan bills was objected to, which is horribly unfortunate. And I hope we're going to have the opportunity to vote on the measure before we leave town. Sportsmen and women are an essential part of the fabric of our country, the fabric of my home state of Colorado. This community supports millions of jobs and contributes billions of dollars annually to our economy, and they are often the drivers of our most important conservation initiatives across our rich landscape. While serving on the Senate Agriculture Committee, I've enjoyed working with sportsmen to craft a revamped conservation title in the Farm Bill. Some people forget that the Farm Bill conservation title is the largest single legislative vehicle for the programs and resources that help us conserve private land all across this country and all across the western United States and enhance vital wildlife habitat across the country. Sportsmen have always played a vital role in crafting that bipartisan title, and that was exactly the way they participated this time as well. And while it's not the reason that I'm here today, I want to talk about Senator Tester's bill, I do want to take the chance to say once again that, in my view, the House of Representatives ought to pass a 5-year farm bill. We passed a bipartisan bill out of this Senate with well over 70 votes, Democrats and Republicans. On the committee, we worked together for over 2 years to create the only bipartisan deficit reduction that's happened in this Congress, in either the House or the Senate. We got rid of direct payments for producers, which was an important reform. We strengthened the conservation title, as I was saying earlier. There is absolutely no reason the House shouldn't pass this bill. And, Madam President, over the break, I traveled 2,500 miles around the state of Colorado, rural communities all over my state, and no one wanted to know what was going on in the presidential election. No one wanted to talk about anything except, why can't the Farm Bill get passed? In modern history, well, there's never been a time in modern history that a committee in the House, in this case the House Agriculture Committee, passed out a bill in a bipartisan way, and it can't even get to the floor for a vote. That's never happened before. Something is wrong over there. And I can tell you that my farmers and ranchers in Colorado, who are going through the worst drought in a generation, want people to knock the politics off and pass this bill. It's bipartisan, it's real deficit reduction, and it's a good bill. We are doing an incredible disservice, as I said, to our farmers and ranchers and also our sportsmen by failing to act on this bipartisan legislation. Madam President, there was a time in my life when I had the chance to live in Montana for a brief time, Senator Tester's home state, and I thought of myself as a sportsman then. I used to fish a lot, chopped a lot of wood out there. And these days I spend a lot more time on airplanes and chasing my 3 daughters to soccer games. But someday I'll get back there, and that brings me to the importance of the package, this package for our nation's sports women and men. The provisions in Senator Tester's bill represent some of the best bipartisan ideas out there to promote hunting, fishing, and recreational access. Bills from both sides of the aisle that have been hanging around here for a long time and now need to get passed. The measure would require that 1.5% of annual land and water conservation funds go to provide public access to lands for hunting and for fishing. I'm a huge supporter of the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and this provision builds on the fine legacy of that program. The amendment also contains a provision that is homegrown from our sportsmen in Colorado. Section 103 provides certainty and parity for America's bow hunters. that they can cross National Park Service land with their bows to legally hunt nearby lands outside the park boundaries. This access is provided to hunters with firearms, but not to those with bows. Madam President, I started working on this issue over 2 years ago when a Colorado bow hunter encountered a problem. After 14 years of trying, this particular hunter had finally drawn a license to hunt elk in the premium game unit in northwest Colorado. He scouted the unit, found the area he wanted to hunt, and he was all set to go until federal officials told him he couldn't cross a narrow strip, a very narrow strip of Park Service land to hunt the BLM land next to it. This is despite the fact that hunters with loaded firearms can cross Park Service land legally and without applying for a permit. The problem with this particular hunter, Madam President, is what brought this issue to my office, but the broader point of the provision is to provide access for our sportsmen and women. We know that we lose thousands of acres of land every day to development, some of it important wildlife habitat. We need to provide all Americans reasonable access to the lands that we have set aside for preservation and wildlife habitat, bow hunters included. That's why I was pleased to increase funding for the Voluntary Public Access Program when we marked up the Farm Bill. That's why I'm proud to have worked with Senator Tester to include this provision in his package that I hope we'll be voting on soon. The bow hunting provision was carefully tailored to ensure that hunting of wildlife within Park Service boundaries remains illegal. Yet the measure still provides reasonable access, which is so important to the sportsmen in Colorado and across the country. I've received a letter of support for the Bennett-Tester bow hunting language from Colorado stakeholder groups across the spectrum, including the Colorado Wildlife Federation, the Rocky Mountain Bighorn Sheep Society, Pheasants Forever, and the Bull Moose Sportsmen's Alliance. And the list goes on. Madam President, I'd like to submit this letter of support from the Colorado groups.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. The overall sportsman's package from Senator Tester is also widely supported, ranging from the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership to the Boone and Crockett Club to the National Rifle Association. The Tester bill represents a bipartisan package of common-sense bills that will benefit our nation's sportsmen and women. And I want to thank Senator Tester for his leadership on behalf of the West and urge a yes vote. Madam President, I deeply appreciate your letting me come to the floor today to talk about this legislation, and I'll simply close by saying that it is my fervent hope that once this election is over, some 45 days from now, that we will come back to this chamber, Republicans and Democrats together, and work together to avoid surfing over this fiscal cliff that would be so damaging to this economy. And people at home know something that people here have not yet figured out, which is even if you believe that you were always right on your side, or had a monopoly of wisdom on your side, which I don't, but some people seem to, even if you believed it, we cannot accomplish this meaningful deficit reduction without doing it in a bipartisan way. It is impossible to do it without doing it in a bipartisan way. And people at home actually want to see it bipartisan because they frankly don't believe in either party's go-it-alone strategy when it comes to the debt and deficit. So my hope is that this election will clear the air, we'll get back to work, and that before January we'll have something convincing to say to the American public on this subject. And with that, Madam President, I thank you for your patience and I yield the floor. Madam President.
Senator from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam President. I see that no colleague has come to the floor, so I wanted to speak on one additional issue just for a moment. And I'll be brief because I understand we likely won't have an opportunity to address this issue before we leave town. My senior senator, Mark Udall, and I have been working to provide resources for the USDA's Emergency Watershed Protection Program, also known as EWP. The reason we've been doing this is that EWP resources help communities recover from wildfires, specifically watersheds that, after being burned, are unstable and risk harming critical drinking water infrastructure and sometimes jeopardize human lives. As many in this chamber know, we had a number of devastating wildfires in Colorado this summer, and the communities of Fort Collins and Colorado Springs in particular are having trouble protecting their vital drinking water infrastructure as their watersheds recover. Despite a letter that Senator Udall and I authored to the appropriators, the House version of the continuing resolution did not contain this critical funding. And that means that the Senate won't be able to vote to help these communities recover. And while we're disappointed, we're going to continue to fight for these resources. And with that, Madam President, I yield the floor, and I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Connell.